We study the law in terms of right and wrong, but the court speaks in decrees. Execution is the procedural manifestation of the doctrine of immutability of judgments. It is the exact moment an abstract ruling becomes a physical, undeniable reality. Mastery of these rules determines whether a client's life savings are recovered or remain trapped behind an unenforceable piece of paper. To navigate Rule 39, we must dissect the sequence of its mechanical steps, map the strict procedural timelines, and isolate the jurisprudential exceptions that define the limits of judicial power. A victory at trial is meaningless if the state cannot extract the money or force the action. Without the algorithmic enforcement of Rule 39, a judgment is just a suggestion. Section 1 establishes execution as a matter of right. This mandate applies exclusively when a judgment completely disposes of the action or proceeding. The court has a purely ministerial duty to execute if 4 conditions are met. The judgment disposes of the action, the period to appeal has expired, no appeal was perfected, and the winning party filed a motion. A judge lacks power to issue a writ motu proprio. The process requires this formal motion. The exception to waiting for finality is Section 2, discretionary execution, also known as execution pending appeal. To execute prematurely, the prevailing party must meet a higher threshold: a motion, notice and hearing, a special order, and paramount above all, good reasons demanding urgency. Because these reasons must be concrete, awards for moral and exemplary damages cannot be the subject of discretionary execution. Their exact amounts remain uncertain. Section 3 provides the losing party a mechanism to halt premature execution by filing a supersedeas bond, which guarantees performance if the judgment is sustained. However, filing this bond doesn't trigger an automatic stay. The execution court retains discretion to deny the stay if original reasons are overwhelmingly urgent. Finally, Section 4 carves out specific judgments that are immediately executory by default: injunction, receivership, accounting, and support. These require no special motion for urgency. The law already demands immediate compliance. Sections 1 through 4 establish a strict equilibrium, balancing a victor's right to immediate relief against the losing party's constitutional property rights during an active appeal. If an executed judgment is reversed by an appellate court, the trial court must restore the status quo through an order of restitution or reparation. Judgments carry strict expiration dates. Section 6 establishes the statute of limitations for enforcing a court's decree. For 5 years, a judgment is enforceable by mere motion. After 5, it becomes dormant, requiring a new action for revival before the 10-year limit. Crucially, validity hinges on the writ's issuance. If the writ is issued on day 1 of year 6, the execution is procedurally void. Section 7 introduces the disruptive variable of mortality. The death of a judgment obligor radically alters the execution pathway for money judgments. The timeline is absolute. If the obligor dies before the sheriff levies their property, execution is forbidden. The victor must file a claim against the estate. But if the obligor dies after the levy, the property is already encumbered, and the sheriff proceeds with the public auction. Time limits and mortality function as rigid jurisdictional boundaries. They strip the court of its power to enforce decrees via simple motion, forcing the victor into different procedural arenas. The writ of execution, detailed in Section 8, is a highly constrained command to the sheriff. It removes arbitrary discretion from the enforcement process. The writ must specify exact amounts: principal, interest, rents, costs, and damages. Critically, the sheriff has no authority to compute these figures. It is the mandatory duty of the judge to state them explicitly. The rules mandate distinct enforcement protocols depending on what the court ordered: extracting money under Section 9 versus forcing physical compliance under Section 10. For money judgments, the sheriff follows a 3-step sequence: demand immediate payment, levy physical properties, and finally, garnish bank accounts. During the levy phase, the judgment obligor retains a statutory right. They, not the sheriff, dictate exactly which properties are seized first. If a losing party refuses to sign a deed of sale, the court does not hold them in contempt. It simply issues an order divesting their title and vesting it directly to the winner. Physical evictions are tightly bound. The sheriff must give a mandatory 3-day notice to peacefully vacate. Furthermore, the sheriff faces an absolute ban on demolishing improvements without a special court order. The writ forces state violence to be hyperspecific. It confines the sheriff's coercive actions strictly to the letters and numbers authorized by the judicial decree. The moment a sheriff levies upon a property, Section 12 dictates that an immediate lien is created in favor of the judgment obligee. However, this lien remains strictly subordinate to any prior existing encumbrances. If the sheriff mistakenly seizes property belonging to an innocent third party, Section 26 provides a failsafe, the terceria. The third-party claimant holds two cumulative remedies. They can file a sworn affidavit of claim with the sheriff to demand the property's release, and they can simultaneously launch a completely independent civil action to vindicate their title. At a public execution auction, the judgment obliger holds the absolute right to halt the sale before the gavel drops by fully paying the debt. If the auction proceeds, the obliger retains the right to direct the exact order of property sales, stopping the auction once the debt is covered. Even after the hammer falls, registering the certificate of sale triggers a 1-year grace period for the judgment obliger to redeem the real property. A subordinate redemptioner may also redeem it, provided they meet a strict evidentiary burden, producing a certified lien copy and an affidavit of the amount due. If the sheriff sells the property of only one solidarily liable debtor to satisfy the entire judgment, that debtor can demand contribution from their co-defendants. The execution sale operates as a reversible mechanism of last resort. The procedural machinery allows the original owner to pay the debt and recover their estate. When standard coercive force fails and an execution returns unsatisfied, the rules authorize an aggressive, inquisitorial phase to hunt down hidden assets. The court can compel the judgment obliger to be examined concerning their property. But this power has geographical limits. The obliger cannot be compelled to travel outside their home province or city. The court may also subpoena third parties, like banks. The mere service of this examination order operates as a direct garnishment of those external funds. Section 43 sets a strict jurisdictional boundary. If the subpoenaed third party outright denies owing the debt, the execution court has no authority to force payment. The victor must file a separate civil action against that third party to prove the debt exists. Once assets are discovered, the court deploys its ultimate preservation tool under Section 41, the appointment of a receiver to seize control of the properties and prevent the debtor from dissipating them. Once the debt is fully paid, the clerk of court permanently records the entry of satisfaction. This act legally closes the record. The rules are designed to be relentless. When physical seizure fails, the system seamlessly pivots to forensic discovery, ensuring that valid judgments are not defeated by hidden wealth or legal evasion. At the end of the procedural life cycle sits Section 47, res judicata. It is the ultimate unbreakable seal placed upon the controversy. It manifests in two absolute commands. Bar by prior judgment blocks the relitigation of identical causes of action between the same parties. Conclusiveness of judgment blocks the relitigation of identical issues, even if the subsequent case involves a completely different cause of action. The Philippines extends this finality across borders under Section 48. A foreign judgment against a person is treated as presumptive evidence of a right, though it requires a local petition for enforcement to become actionable here. That foreign judgment can only be repelled on specific, exceptionally narrow grounds: a clear want of jurisdiction, a lack of notice to the party, collusion, or extrinsic fraud. Every step, every timeline, and every exception in Rule 39 connects directly to the uncompromising authority of the highest court in the land. Rule 39 functions as the procedural immune system of the judiciary, providing the mechanics required to transform abstract justice into an immutable, unalterable reality.